I'm Anna, and I grew up in the shadow of my older sister, Kelly. In our house, she was the star. Our home was always full of people, aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. They'd show up in our backyard like ants drawn to a picnic, eager for my mom's famous barbecue and to watch Kelly perform. Our backyard felt like a stage, with a neatly trimmed lawn and a big oak tree that made the perfect backdrop. Dad would light the grill, and the smell of charcoal and sizzling meat would fill the air. Mom was always rushing around, making sure everyone had a drink in their hand. Kelly, sweetie, Aunt Cheryl would call out over the noise. Why don't you sing us a song? And just like that, all eyes turned to Kelly. She would jump onto a chair, her golden curls bouncing and a playful sparkle in her eyes. She'd clear her throat dramatically, and then she'd start singing. She loved doing her best Celine Dion impression with My Heart Will Go On, and the adults went wild, clapping and cheering like it was a real concert. Mom and Dad would smile proudly, with Dad even wiping away a tear now and then. Meanwhile, I would be off to the side, trying to disappear among the bushes. It wasn't that I didn't want to join in, but whenever I tried to sing, it sounded like a cat in distress. And poetry? Forget it. The words would get stuck, and I'd end up stammering and turning bright red. I'd often hear my relatives whispering about how different I was from my sister. It wasn't just the relatives who made it clear. Mom and Dad knew who the family star was. While Kelly was busy with dance classes, singing lessons, and art workshops, I was left to my own devices. I didn't mind much, though. I found comfort in the old, dusty books on our shelves. The only person who seemed to understand me was Great Aunt Teresa. She'd find me hiding behind the garage or up in the treehouse with my nose deep in a book. "What adventure are you on today, Anna?" she'd ask, sitting down beside me. I'd look up, grateful for the break. "Oh, just reading about ancient Egypt," I'd say, showing her the cover of my latest book. Teresa would nod, her eyes full of kindness. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, girl. Don't let anyone tell you different." Those moments with Teresa were a comfort to my heart. She didn't expect me to perform or be anyone other than myself. With her, I could just be Anna, the quiet girl who liked books more than the noise of family gatherings. But no matter how much I loved those moments, they didn't take away the hurt of being the forgotten child. Every time Kelly learned a new song or won another award, my parents would praise her and shower her with gifts, new clothes, the latest gadgets, you name it. And me? I got hand-me-downs and long sighs of disappointment. School became my escape. I wasn't the most popular kid, but I found my place in the classroom. I wasn't happy just sitting back and listening. I needed to understand everything. "Mrs. David," I'd ask after class, my voice calm but sure, "could you go over that part about mitosis again? I didn't quite get it." She'd smile, clearly happy that I cared. "Of course, Anna. Let's go over it together." If a teacher didn't have time, I'd ask for book recommendations. Soon, my backpack was stuffed with extra reading material. I stayed up late, poring over those books, determined to get every subject right. All that effort paid off. By the time I got to high school, I was the top student in my class. For once, I was the best at something. I even made a few friends, other quiet book lovers who didn't mind my calm ways. As graduation got closer, our house became Kelly Central. Mom spent all her time helping her with her portfolio for a fancy college's advertising and PP program. "Oh, honey, this campaign idea is perfect," Mom would say, looking over Kelly's work. "You're so talented." I'd roll my eyes and go back to my room, burying myself in my studies. But one night, during yet another family dinner all about Kelly's college plans, I couldn't hold back anymore. "I'm going to college, too," I blurted out. "I want to study management." The silence was heavy, and then, to my shock, they all burst into laughter. "Oh, sweetie," Mom said, wiping tears from her eyes. "We don't have money for that. You'll need to get a job after graduation. You're just not as gifted as your sister." It felt like a slap to the face. "But I'm the top student in my class," I said, my voice shaking. I stammered, my face burning with anger and embarrassment. "I get straight A's," I yelled, storming up to my room. I came back down with my report card and slammed it on the table. They all leaned in to look, their eyes widening in surprise. Well, I'll be damned, Dad muttered, scratching his head. When did this happen? It's been happening for years. I snapped. Not that any of you ever noticed. Mom looked guilty. Her face flushed. Anna, we had no idea, she began, but Dad cut her off. Look, it doesn't change anything. We've spent all our savings on Kelly's education. There's nothing left for you, Anna. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. You'll go work at my cousin Gary's restaurant after graduation. I turned and ran, ignoring their voices. I sprinted up the stairs to my room and slammed the door so hard the walls shook. I collapsed on my bed, sobbing until I felt something inside me harden. Fine, I thought, clenching my fists. If they won't help me, I'll find another way. I'll show them what I can do. The next few months were a blur. Kelly went off to college, her departure filled with tearful goodbyes and proud hugs from our parents. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my studies like never before, determined to finish at the top of my class. During that time, I spent more and more afternoons at Great Aunt Teresa's cozy house. It became my escape from the tension at home. One sunny afternoon, as we sat in her warm kitchen drinking tea, she asked the question I had been dreading. So, Anna, she said gently, her kind eyes fixed on me. What are your plans after graduation? I stared into my teacup, trying to hold back the tears. I don't know, Aunt Teresa, I said. Mom and Dad won't help me with college. They say there's no money left after paying for Kelly's education. Teresa was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Anna, dear, I have some savings. I'd like to use them for your college. You're smart as a whip, and I won't let that brain of yours go to waste. Her words hit me like a wave, and I burst into tears. I was overwhelmed by her kindness and the sudden hope that my dreams weren't lost after all. Thank you, I sobbed, throwing my arms around her. Thank you so much, Aunt Teresa. The months flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation with my diploma in hand. As I looked out at the crowd, I saw Aunt Teresa smiling proudly. My parents were there too, but they looked more awkward than proud. That evening, as I was going through college brochures, Mom came into my room. Anna, honey, she said, her voice sugary sweet. Your father's cousin Gary called. He's got a waitressing job for you at his restaurant. Isn't that exciting? I took a deep breath. Actually, Mom, I won't be needing that job. I'm going to college. Dad appeared in the doorway, frowning. And how exactly do you plan to pay for that? Aunt Teresa is helping me, I said, holding my head high. She's giving me her savings for tuition. The silence that followed was almost funny. Then, to my surprise, Dad's face turned red with anger. Absolutely not, he shouted. If Teresa has money to spare, it should go to Kelly. She needs a car for her job in advertising after she graduates next year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I snapped. This is my chance to get an education and make something of myself. Don't be selfish, Anna, Mom added. Your sister needs that money more than you do. No, I said, my voice shaking but steady. This is my money now, and I'm using it for college. End of discussion. From that moment, home life became unbearable. My parents either ignored me completely or snapped at me over the smallest things. The tension was crushing. After a terrible argument one night, I called Aunt Teresa, crying, and told her everything. Pack your bags, sweetheart, she said without hesitation. You're moving in with me. The next day, I packed everything I owned into a cab and drove away, watching my childhood home shrink in the rearview mirror. As I arrived at Aunt Teresa's house, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The summer flew by as I prepared for college, and before I knew it, I was stepping onto the campus of State University. Thanks to my high grades and Aunt Teresa's kindness, I got into the management program I had always dreamed of. On the first day of classes, I felt like I was floating as I sat in my introduction to business lecture, soaking in every word. I couldn't help but think, I made it. I'm really here. Meanwhile, Kelly was starting her senior year at her fancy college. I hadn't heard much from her or my parents since I moved out, but I tried not to let it bother me. I was too busy enjoying my new freedom and the thrill of college life. Then, about a month into the semester, Aunt Teresa called. "Anna, dear," she said, sounding hesitant, "I think you should sit down for this." My heart pounded as she told me the news I'd missed. Apparently, Kelly had come home out of nowhere and announced she had dropped out of college. The reason? She was pregnant. According to Aunt Teresa, Kelly had acted like it was no big deal, saying, "Oh, don't worry." Kelly had just tossed her hair and said, "Don't worry. The baby's father is rich. We'll be getting married soon." But things didn't turn out that way. It turned out Kelly's boyfriend wasn't as loyal as she believed, and when he found out she'd been with his friend too, everything blew up. Now, nobody was sure who the real father was. Aunt Teresa sighed as she told me the story. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, trying to take it all in. A small part of me felt a twisted satisfaction. The golden child had finally fallen. But mostly, I just felt sad for Kelly and the mess she was in. The drama went on for months. Aunt Teresa kept me in the loop with all the family gossip from gatherings I no longer attended. When Kelly's baby was born, a DNA test confirmed that her boyfriend was indeed the father. But instead of the dream wedding Kelly had imagined, he only agreed to pay child support. The final blow came when Kelly, desperate for money, ended up working as a waitress at Uncle Gary's restaurant, the same job my parents had tried to push on me. After I hung up the phone, my emotions were all over the place. A small, petty part of me wanted to gloat and show off my success to my family. But mostly, I felt deeply grateful for how far I'd come. The next few years flew by in a whirlwind of classes, exams, and late-night study sessions. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, holding my hard-earned management degree. As I looked out at the crowd, I saw Aunt Teresa smiling proudly, tears of joy in her eyes. Because of my top grades and great recommendations from my professors, I landed a manager position at the Gilded Fork, one of the top restaurants in the city. The salary was more than I had ever dreamed of, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly accomplished. When I got my first paycheck, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I went straight to the electronics store and bought the latest smartphone for Aunt Teresa. Her eyes lit up when I handed it to her. "Oh, Anna," she gasped, turning the sleek phone over in her hands. "This is too much." I just smiled, pulling out my own phone. "Not at all. Now, let me show you how to use it." Over the next few weeks, I taught Aunt Teresa everything about social media. She picked it up quickly, especially enjoying YouTube's video feature. Soon, her page was full of videos, her garden, her cat, and her famous apple pie in all its stages of preparation. I'd watch Aunt Teresa's videos during my lunch breaks, always leaving a comment or a like. It became our way of staying connected, even when work kept me busy. One day, as I was getting ready for the dinner rush, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it and was surprised to see my mother's name. We hadn't spoken in years. "Anna," she said, her voice hesitant. "We were hoping you might come over to talk." After a long pause, I agreed. That Friday, I found myself standing on the porch of my childhood home, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door swung open. "Anna." My mother pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you." Inside, I saw my father, Kelly, and a toddler I assumed was my niece. The atmosphere was tense, but not as hostile as I'd feared. "You look good, kiddo," Dad said, his voice gruff but friendly. "We hear you're doing well for yourself." I nodded, still a bit cautious. "I am. I'm a manager at the Gilded Fork now." Their eyes widened when I mentioned the restaurant's name. Mom cleared her throat. That's wonderful, dear. Actually, that's part of why we wanted to talk to you." For the next hour, they apologized for how they had treated me, admitting they were wrong to dismiss my potential. Then they got to the real reason for the visit. "Anna," Mom said, glancing at Kelly, we were wondering if you could help Kelly get a job at your restaurant." I looked at my sister, who was bouncing her daughter on her knee. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'll see what I can do," I said finally. "No promises, but I'll ask." True to my word, I spoke to Mr. Brandon, the restaurant owner, about Kelly. To my surprise, he agreed to give her a chance as an administrator. Kelly started the following week. I kept an eye on her, half expecting her to mess up or cause problems, but she surprised me. She was punctual, efficient, and the customers loved her friendly attitude. As the weeks went by, I found myself easing up around her. We weren't best friends, but we developed a respectful working relationship. Just when I thought everything was settled, life threw another surprise my way, this time a good one. One day, Mr. Brandon called me into his office. My heart pounded, worried I might be in trouble. But instead, he smiled and said, "Anna, how would you like to help me expand the business?" Before I knew it, I was stepping into a new chapter. I was in charge of opening not one, but 4 new restaurants. My days were packed with staff meetings, menu tastings, and crunching numbers. It was exhausting, exciting, and everything I had ever wanted. The promotion came with a big raise, and suddenly I had more money than I knew what to do with. That's when the calls from my parents began. At first, it was small things. "The roof is leaking," Mom would say, hesitantly. "We were wondering if you might be able to help out a little." It felt surprisingly good to say yes, to fix their problems with a simple transfer of money. It started with the roof, then a new water heater, and soon enough, I was paying for a complete home renovation. As their financial situation improved, thanks to the allowance I was sending them each month, the family gatherings returned. But this time, it was different. "Have you heard about Anna's latest project?" Mom would proudly tell the relatives. "She's opening a new restaurant downtown. We're so proud of her." I'd catch Kelly's eye across the room, and she'd give me a small smile. She was doing well, too, having been promoted to head administrator at the Gilded Fork. "My girls," Dad would say, putting an arm around each of us. Both of them making their old man proud. Part of me wanted to be bitter, to remind them of how they treated me before, but a bigger part of me just enjoyed their approval, something I had wanted for so long. As I drove home that night, a feeling of contentment washed over me. After all these years, I finally had what I'd always wanted, success in my career and the love and appreciation of my family. I was the golden child now, but more importantly, I was my own person, standing on my own 3 feet. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when everything came crashing down. I was scrolling through YouTube, sipping my coffee, when I saw that Aunt Teresa had posted a new video. It was from one of the family parties I'd missed because of work. Smiling, I clicked play, expecting to see the usual fun and laughter. But instead, what I saw made my blood run cold. There, clear as day, were my parents, their faces red from drinking and self-importance. Mom was waving her hands around, her voice slurred but unmistakable. "And Anna, that ungrateful little freeloader," she said. "She barely gives us anything. We're not made of money, you know." Dad joined in, his face flushed. "That's right. We're doing just fine. Thanks to our Kelly. She's the one keeping that fancy restaurant running. Anna just rides on her coattails." The video went on, showing various relatives nodding in agreement, some even throwing in their own complaints. Kelly sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable, but she didn't speak up to defend me. As the video ended, I just sat there, stunned. I sat there, stunned. How could they do this? After everything I had done for them, after all the money I had given them, how could they say such terrible, false things? My hands were shaking as I scrolled down to the comments. There I saw a series of messages from my parents. "Teresa, delete this video right now. You had no right to post this. Take it down immediately." But Aunt Teresa's reply brought me to tears. "I don't know how to delete videos," she wrote, "and even if I did, I wouldn't. It's time everyone saw the truth about how you treat Anna. She's the one supporting you, and this is how you repay her kindness. Shame on you both." I sat there for what felt like hours, watching the video over and over, reading the comments again and again. The betrayal cut deep, reopening old wounds I thought had healed. Finally, I picked up my phone and called Aunt Teresa. "Oh, Anna, dear," she said as she answered, her voice full of sympathy. "I guess you've seen the video." "Yeah," I choked out, my voice raw from crying. "I can't believe it, Aunt Teresa. How could they?" I could hear the anger in her voice. "They've always been like this, Anna. You just weren't around to see it. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. but maybe it's for the best. You deserve to know the truth. We talked for hours, with Aunt Teresa comforting me as I moved through shock, anger, and sadness. As night fell, I made a decision. I'm cutting them off, I said, my voice steady despite the pain. No more money, no more help. They made their choices. Now they can deal with the consequences. The days after the video were some of the hardest in my life. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Their cruel, false words kept playing in my head. After a week of silence, I finally sent them a brief text. I've seen the video. I know how you really feel. Don't contact me again. The money stops now. Their replies came flooding in right away. At first, they were apologetic. Anna, sweetie, we're so sorry. We didn't mean any of it. Please forgive us. But as I kept my silence, their tone changed. We're your parents. You owe us. Each message felt like another stab, but I stayed strong. I had given them chance after chance, and they had only hurt me. It was time to end the cycle. Surprisingly, Kelly stayed out of it. At work, she continued to be the perfect employee, efficient and professional. If she was upset about losing our parents' financial support, she didn't show it. Our interactions remained polite but distant. I'm not taking sides, Kelly told me one day after a staff meeting. It's between you and them. I nodded, appreciating that she was staying neutral, even though part of me wished she would stand up for me. But I understood. She had her own child to worry about now. As weeks turned into months, I found myself relying heavily on Aunt Teresa. Our Friday video calls became the highlight of my week. She would tell me stories about her garden or her latest baking adventures, giving me a much-needed break from the chaos my life had become. You're doing the right thing, Anna, she'd say whenever I started to doubt myself. Don't let them manipulate you anymore. To my surprise, other relatives started reaching out too. My cousin Cynthia, who had always been kind to me at family gatherings, sent a heartfelt email. I saw the video, she wrote. I want you to know I think you're amazing, Anna. What you've achieved, how you've helped everyone. You're an inspiration. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Uncle Frank, Dad's brother, called me out of the blue. Kid, I've watched you grow up into an incredible woman. Your parents are fools if they can't see how special you are. You've got family in your corner. Remember that. These words of support felt like healing for my wounded heart. I realized that while I might have lost my parents, I had gained a family who valued me for who I truly was. As the year came to an end, Mr. Brandon called me into his office. I went in, nervous, worried that the family drama might have affected my work. But instead, he greeted me with a big smile. Anna, I'm retiring next year, he said. I want you to take over as CEO of the restaurant group. I stood there, stunned, unable to speak. Finally, I managed to stammer. Are you sure? He nodded, his eyes shining. I've never been more sure of anything. You've earned this, Anna. You're the reason this business has flourished. It's time you took the reins. As I left his office, my mind spinning with excitement, I realized something important. The little girl who had once been ignored and underestimated had grown into a woman who exceeded everyone's expectations, including her own.